Thank you so much. All right, so this is the Maintenance and Development Committee meeting. I'm Jesse Letterman, Chairman of the Maintenance and Development Committee, and we're calling the meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. We are joined by my colleague, City Councilor Zeta Govan, and also by the Director of DPW, Chris Signoli. Chris, thank you for being here. And I called this meeting in response to the news that the incinerator that for many years has operated at Bondi's Island and been responsible for incinerating waste, not just from the city of Springfield, but from 22 other communities, is either slated to be closed very shortly or may have already closed. We're hoping to get some clarity on that today as the result of a bankruptcy sale. And what I'm hoping to understand today is a little bit more about what is actually going on at Bondi's Island, what this means in the short term for Springfield's waste management, and then what our initial plans for the future are. So maybe we can begin, Chris, if you want to just brief Councilor Govan and myself on what occurred a couple of weeks ago, and then we can jump into the rest of the questions.
Sure. I'll give you a very brief overview of the facility. The facility has been in place there since the early 1980s. Initially, city operations along with Covanta and others. So it has been in operation for almost 40 years. Our contract has been with Covanta, and we had two separate agreements with Covanta. We had a landfill services agreement for them running the landfill, and then we had a waste services agreement on how we disposed of our waste at the incinerator. In 2017, we redid those agreements. We were getting too many changes, modifications, so we decided to redo the agreements and entered into a new agreement in 2017. In 2019, there was a couple little changes. Number one, Covanta split or made a name change from Covanta Springfield to Covanta Bondi, or vice versa. I can't remember which one. And at that same time, they entered into an agreement with Community Eco Power to take over the ownership of the Springfield incinerator and Pittsfield. We went through a negotiation with three parties and entered into a three-way agreement with all parties in 2019. Community Eco Power has been running the facility since then. And other than a day here, a day there, everything has been working fine. And in June of last year, Community Eco Power filed for bankruptcy. Since that time, there had been no issues during the bankruptcy. Operations were still ongoing. And in March of this year, we were notified by F&G, which is the division of USA Hauling, that they were in the process of purchasing the facility from Community Eco Power. Community Eco Power also sold the facility in Pittsfield, and that was sold to Casella. On March, we were notified, I believe, on either March 16th or 17th, that we had a Zoom meeting. I was just looking at my calendar to make sure my dates were good. On March 22nd, we had a Zoom meeting between the city of Springfield and all of the other communities that disposed of material at the facility, and with F&G. And we're basically told that the sale would be occurring on April 15th of 2022. And we had 3 weeks to enter into an agreement with them moving forward. During that period of time, we did a lot of due diligence back and forth with F&G. We have since entered into a what we're calling a bridge agreement that we do not have a full agreement with them at this point. Beginning on April 19th, the incinerator is no longer operable. Right now, the facility is acting as a transfer station. They are in the process. They have been given a temporary transfer permit by the DEP, and they are in the process of going through the process of getting a full transfer station approval. At this point, our operations are exactly the same. Now, our tipping fee at this point, with Covanta at the incinerator, was $77 and I believe 15 cents a ton. Our contract with F&G, as well as all of the other communities, is now $97 a ton. When we entered into our three-way agreement with us, Covanta, and Community EcoPower, based upon our due diligence, we knew that there was a high possibility that the incinerator would be closing. So what we did is we entered into agreement when we knew the incinerator would be closing. We knew that our tipping fee would go up because obviously the material needs to be transported somewhere. And so we entered into an agreement where Covanta, at any time during the term of our contract, if the incinerator is not operable, we are covered up to $750,000 a year. So even though we will be paying more, Covanta has to pay the difference between the $77 and the $97. So from the city of Springfield standpoint and residents, and from an expense standpoint, our expenses are going up, but our revenue is going up as well. So therefore, there is no change in financial position with the city. That cannot be said for anybody else. As far as other municipalities around the region and all the private haulers. So I think businesses are going to start feeling that pinch and passing it along to the customers. So it's going to be about a 25% increase in trash removal fees. For everybody's purposes, we dispose now of about 47,000 tons of trash at that location. And where we are right now is we are finalizing bridge agreements and starting the negotiation for a long-term agreement with F&G. And we have also met with other haulers to make sure that our negotiation is moving forward in the right way. And at this time, the incinerator is not operable. In the term of our agreement with Covanta is 1 year past the closure of the landfill. And right now we have about 10 years left on the landfill based upon a expansion that was granted a few years ago. So we have covered ourselves financially through that period of time, which at that period of time we would be paying a higher cost anyways. So we are covered for, over the next 10 years at a cost of about $7.5 million with Covanta. So from a negotiating standpoint, we did a very good job making sure that we were covered. And at this point, our operations as a city, as DPW, does not change. From a resident perspective, nothing changes. There's no change in collection strategy. There's no change in collection dates. There is no intent to adjust trash fee. So from a citizen standpoint, there's no changes inside of us. Our operations are exactly the same. The materials going to the same spot. So that's kind of a long-winded version of where we were and where we are right now.
Thank you, Chris. We're also joined by my colleague on the committee, Ward 1 City Council, Maria Perez. Maria, thank you for joining us. And I think you jumped in right at the beginning when Chris was starting, so you didn't miss anything. Chris, before I turn it over to my colleagues, I just have a couple of questions. First, I want to make sure I understand the numbers. So the deal in the Covanta contract nets the city up to $750,000 a year to bridge the gap between the new tipping fee and previous tipping fee?
Correct.
And that's good for approximately the next 10 years?
Correct.
So if we're doing 47,000 tons with a roughly $20 increase per ton, at least this year, my calculation puts that at about 940,000. So we still have some budget impact, just not the budget impact, nowhere near the budget impact of other communities.
Correct. And what we will be doing this year, for example, as you said, it's about $10,000, $20. Actually, it's a little, whatever the number is. I'm trying to do math in my head, but that at the end of this fiscal year, we've already notified Covanta, whatever that difference is, we're going to be billing you for that difference. So we have a higher expense number, but then that will come in as a revenue number.
Right.
So
like
yeah, nothing, bottom line doesn't change. We just end up changing revenue and expenses, and we've carried that into the budget for next year as well.
But there is some increase. Like if we're up $20 a ton and we're doing 47,000 tons, we're going to pay $940,000 more this year than we did last year. We're going to get $750,000 back.
No, we only pay the difference. So it would be $20 roughly difference. Right. So 20, and if we're doing 10,000, that's only about 200,000 this year.
Oh, okay. So I'm saying, well, so it's up, but it's up $20 a ton overall.
Yes. Yeah. So the original number is covered. It's the difference between the original number and the new number that is covered under that agreement.
The difference between the new number and the original number is $20 a ton.
$20, yes.
We're eliminating 47,000 tons a year.
Yes.
That's $940,000.
Well, yeah, but we only, for the part of the fiscal year, we only have about 10,000.
Sure, for this year, but then
for this year, yeah.
For next year, though.
Yeah, for next year, what we've done is we've carried that full expense in the expense side, and then on the revenue side, we've put in the 750.
Right. So we will have a roughly $190,000 increase next fiscal year.
No, we should have zero. With our increase next year is covered with the difference. So bottom line, there should be no.
So we're bringing the 750. So we're not using the whole 750 this year. We're bringing it over to next year.
Well, it's every fiscal year. So we're only using a piece of it this year, and we will use whatever we need next year up to the 750. So next year, our tipping fee stays at 97.
Right.
And so the difference next year will only, our 77 would be going up to about 80 anyways. So next year, we will stay at 97. So the calculation difference next year would be between the 80 to the 97. So
this references back to the original contract.
Correct.
Where there were fees built in.
Correct.
So how long is the 97 tipping fee good for? 97.
Right now to the end of fiscal year 23.
So it could increase after, likely will increase after.
Right, and we haven't gotten to that point in the negotiations yet on how we do that. Historically, what we've done is we tie it to the commodities market, and it's a simple calculation, and we're able to see it every month, so we know what's going on. So it's a commodities market thing versus a straight 1, 2, 5%, whatever it is. So we tie it to the market. So in certain years, it's 1%, and then in other years, it might be 3, 3.5.
And what is the ownership status now of the actual landfill site? Who owns it? Still
we own the landfill. It is managed by Covanta.
And now what about the exact site of the incinerator, the previous?
The incinerator is now owned by F&G.
Who owns the land?
F&G does. The land and the incinerator were owned by Community Eco Power. Now F&G owns both.
So what will the ash landfill be used for now that the incinerator is defunct?
They, right now, say pre this issue, about 40% of the ash going into the landfill came from the Bondi's incinerator. The rest of it came from other facilities that Covanta uses that are part of their permit. So now what they can do is they can go out and find either their own facilities, which they have facilities around New England as well, to be able to bring additional ash there up to a total of 105,000 cubic yards a year. And that's in the permit with that. So that 105,000 a year is what, when we do the backwards calculation, that gets us to the 10 years of capacity of the landfill. So they will have other areas, other vendors to be able to bring in ash to dispose in that landfill.
What's the city get out of that deal?
The only thing that the city gets out of it is, number one, they are operating our compost yard waste program for nothing. Then there is a calculation that if they, right now, everything's just disposal from their stuff. If they were to accept payment from anybody to dispose of material there, we get a percentage of it.
So, well, their contracts in other communities are to incinerate and then they bring the ash. You're saying if their contract calls for anything beyond incineration, we get a piece of it?
Well, yeah, for example, say F&G was bringing their stuff to somewhere in Connecticut, and then Covanta went to F&G and said, you can pay us to deposit your material here.
I see what you're saying.
Whatever they would collect, we would get a piece of that.
Okay. We will we'll dig into that a little more later.
Yeah.
Let me move to my final round for now, and I do want to give Councilor Govan and Councilor Perez some time as well. Where is F&G now taking our waste, and what is happening to it?
Just trying to get my video started again there. It was locking up for whatever reason. F&G is bringing.
I thought you had tricked us and put a picture of yourself sitting at your desk.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it's the video's not working. So
we can hear you fine. We can hear you fine.
And as long as you can hear me. Right now, they bring it to 3 or 4 of their locations in Connecticut. Wallingford, I believe, they are based out of Enfield. I think it's Wallingford and Meriden are the locations that they're going to.
Are those incinerators?
Yes, they are bringing material to different incinerators in Connecticut, and then they are hauling their ash to other places, and whether it's in the Northeast or New York facilities that they are involved in, that they own or as they either own or involved in.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll have some other thoughts, but I do see Councilor Perez has her hand up, and I want to go to Councilor Govan. Also, Councilor Perez, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to ask, when it comes to monitoring the ashes, who in the city is going to monitor that they are transferring the ashes to the other location?
Once it is disposed of at the facility, for us, we are done, then it is under 100% control of the DEP.
Okay.
So they have to report to DEP on their permit, where the material goes, daily basis, and we get copies of all that. But what ends up under their permit through DEP. So because our material that is being brought there is about 40% of the total that is brought there on a daily, monthly, yearly basis. So wherever it leaves there, that they have to go through that reporting for the DEP. We do not, other than knowing the information, we do not monitor. DEP does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perez. Councilor Govan?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for this, because I was wondering, a lot of my constituents were also wondering what happened there. So that's I guess it's good news. And my question is regarding environmental, of course. So now that we're no longer incinerating, are we doing anything to increase our recycling, or does I heard a rumor, and I don't know how much of a rumor it is, but that everything, even our recycling, goes to the dump. Is that true?
No, recycling cannot go to a dump. it is illegal in New England and all the New England states to bury recycling or to even incinerate it. Right
Okay.
now, our recycling, we did a recycling contract in 2019. Up to 2019, our recycling costs, along with everybody else in the region, was zero. We disposed of our stuff on Tremont Street up off of Page Boulevard as a single stream community. Dual stream communities dispose their material down on Bernie Avenue. So in 2019, there was a new contract through the DEP for recycling. We entered into a new contract with Casella to dispose of our recycling at $119 a ton. So we were actually paying more to get rid of recycling than we were trash. The recycling industry was at rock bottom. Once COVID hit, we have a revenue stream with that as well. And our revenue stream was probably going to be about $30 a ton. Since we have hit COVID and raw materials are very, very hard to come by, our recycling revenue has gone through the roof. We went into about 4 or 5 months of this fiscal year where we were actually getting back $130 a ton while paying $119. So we were actually making money. So the recycling market right now is good for certain things: cardboard, newspaper, some types of plastic. So right now, if you are recycling industry, you cannot bury it, you cannot incinerate it. It has to go through the recycling process. So I get those all the time where people say, yeah, we know you're just putting it in the same truck and it's getting off. No, that is illegal. It can't be done. And some haulers out in the eastern part of the state they've been trying to petition because it was cheaper to incinerate it than it would be to bring it somewhere. But we're all denied by the DEP.
Okay, thank you for that. And one more question, Chairman. Now that we don't have the incinerator here, would it be safe to say that our air quality is going to improve? And how will that?
It should, number one, because you're not doing the incinerating. That plant being about 40 years old, probably needed close to $30 million, $25 to $30 million in renovations to really bring it up to snuff. The plant will be decommissioned. All the incinerator materials will be taken out of it. And it will be basically, be used as a indoor transfer facility. So our vehicles will drive in, material gets taken out, it gets sorted, and then they run it away from there. But without having the output from the incinerator itself, yeah, I mean, that's going to contribute to, I'm going to say, a better air quality, depending upon your point of view of the city of Springfield. But taking that product, and I'm not even going to guess at, a percentage of material that, from an incinerator, what that impact is going to be. But it will definitely have a better impact than it not being there than it will be being there.
Okay, and hopefully we can get some numbers on that in the future from.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the application process that our F&G is going through with DEP right now, because they have to do odor control analysis and make sure that it's a net win. So that will all start to come through in the next few months on that data.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Govan. And I think from an overall air quality standpoint, this is a positive move for not just the city of Springfield, but the region. I mean, one of the things that was always of great concern to me from an environmental justice perspective was not only was this incinerator incinerating waste from the city of Springfield, but also from dozens of other communities who were trucking their waste into our community essentially and burning it on the banks of the Connecticut River. So the shutdown of the actual incinerator is welcome news, in my opinion. I think what we need to do now, though, with this 10-year period that we have this contract negotiated, is really dig in to our solid waste master plan and see, how we can update it to really rise to the occasion and move into, what I think is hopefully a more environmentally friendly, future for our waste. And I think there's several ways we can do that, but certainly the incinerator was one of the top polluters in the area. So its decommissioning is a win for the city of Springfield. And it sounds like, Chris, from the contract that's been negotiated, there is a buffer for any financial impact to give us some extensive time to really look at the future of waste in the city of Springfield. To that point, though, relative to the increase in truck traffic that I'm sure will now take place, are you in conversations with F&G about what that will look like in terms of the waste then being trucked away from the transfer location and trying to keep that, as far away from city streets as possible?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, when we were first notified on this, I immediately contacted DEP because the location, for the incinerator, those ramps there, that it's not great geometry, number one. And, it's kind of a very difficult place for our guys and everybody else to get in and out of. So one of the things that we talked to DEP about is that, number one, even though that particular location is not the city of Springfield, what are the routes? Where is stuff going to be going? Because their formal application for a transfer station has to take all that into account. They got to do the traffic studies, the truck studies, the access locations, all of that good stuff. Because in general, vehicles coming out of there are going to do one of two things. Most of them are going to go Route 5 south to the South End Bridge to either 91 north, but primarily 91 south, is what we have been told, with everything basically going to the Connecticut area from there. But, none of that has been put in formal writing. So once they start going through the application process, and we've started to see the outline of what DEP is kind of looking for as their permit application. So as we get that material, we're going to be vetting it on our side. But right now, there should not be trucks of this material driving the streets of City of Springfield under any circumstance, other than our trucks that we do every day. But there should not be hauling in and around the City of Springfield, as far as I'm concerned.
That's an issue I think we'll need to closely monitor, especially in the north and south end, where you would see folks looking to enter the interstate. Those neighborhoods have already been subject to disproportionate amounts of pollution, and we don't want to see that continue. So we'll monitor that closely. I just want to turn again to the ash landfill, and Councilor Perez and Councilor Govan, if you have questions, please just jump in, raise your hand. I'll recognize you straight away. Relative to the ash landfill, my understanding is, Chris, that landfill is a lined landfill as we operate it. Is that correct? It's lined?
It's 100% lined. Probably the bottom 5-10% is actually trash. When that started in 1980, the incinerator wasn't online, so there is some buried trash, but it's minimal. It is all lined. All the cells are lined. When we do capping of various areas, it's lined. We work through DEP on what closure, when we do closures, drainage layouts, all of that good stuff. Everything there is lined. And all the different cells, every time they come up X amount of feet, they're required to cap it, line it, and then cap it, and then line it, and then cap it, and then line it.
So there is no unlined portion of that landfill?
No. And what we have there as well, we have a flare system that collects methane in the system, and we have drainage that collects any internal liquid that may be in there from a water standpoint. So any of the methane that may be coming from any of the decomposing material inside of the ash is burnt off every so often when levels reach a certain thing. When you may drive there, you may see the flare going on from time to time.
Does that includes the portion of the landfill that is actual unincinerated garbage? That's
correct.
Well?
Yes, that's both. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anytime you're doing a closure now, you have to have that in there, regardless of the material, to make sure that because once you line it, you're trapping everything in. The materials come together, and as anything decomposing creates methane, so that has to be burnt off.
Chris, what will the ultimate decommissioning of that landfill look like 10 years from now?
Well, what my hope is, right now, for those of you who have nothing to do and ever want to go out there and look at it, I'm happy to show you. There's 2 cells in that facility, one closer to Route 5, one a little farther away. In between it, there is a very big valley. What the hope has always been is that we would do another expansion of that. But basically, if there's no more expansions, there's going to be a very, very small area of flat land on the top of it that, and then we have north, south, east, and west facing slopes. And as most likely what we've done, as we've done on a couple of our other landfills, basically put solar on them to be able to get some passive, no passive recreational use, but at least a passive use out of the landfill, be able to get some money out of it. Right next to where we are, the land that's immediately north of it is Eversource. They have a solar system on that one as well. We have a solar system on the old landfill on Cottage Street. So that seems to be the logical thing. There is no plan at this time, but that kind of seems the logical way that we would be going.
All right. Well, I feel that we are particularly have more of it out there now, which is good. The news on recycling is good too, because I remember holding a meeting 5 years ago, Chris, where we really didn't know where we were going to go with the recycling program because of how we knew we had to continue because it was the right thing to do, but of how expensive it had become. And really the fact that the material was not getting picked up in the way that people would imagine it would. Right. I mean, people, I think when they think of recycling, they're really thinking of upcycling, but it was really being downcycled into very unusable material. So hopefully that will continue. Councilor Govan?
Yes, thank you so much. I have a question about that, Chris. So the revenue that comes from the recycling, how do we make money off the recycling?
What we have in our contract, we put into our recycling contract all of the different items that are part of recycling, because when we recycle, say, cardboard, there's actually a couple different categories of that, whether we're talking about glass or plastic.
Right. And
we have a percentage that was agreed upon by our vendor. And in there is the commodity market that as the commodity markets go up and down, they have to pay us those percentages on a monthly basis. So if, right now, there is a massive demand for cardboard and certain types of plastic. So those numbers from a commodities market are going higher and higher. So every month when we give them, X amount of tonnage, it's calculated that, okay, X amount of this is cardboard. So therefore we owe the city of Springfield this much. We have it set up a percentage wise in the commodities market in our contract, and once a month we get a check. We
Okay.
calculate it, we give them the numbers, they give us a check.
That's really good to know, because like I said earlier, a lot of people think it all goes to the same place. So
Yeah.
probably a lot of people don't recycle as much as they probably should. So I'm wondering if we could get the word out to the residents about that, that might encourage them to recycle more. And then in the end, maybe we can get rid of the trash fee. That's an aside.
Right now, our trash fee generates about $4 million. And our solid waste, our enterprise fund budget next year will probably be about 12. So the trash fee generates about a third of the revenue for the expense side of the enterprise fund. So that's always, obviously it's, you get rid of the trash fee. Now you got to come up with $4 million. So that's always been the my mantra with the mayor. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that, of course, all of those valid points, but we are, I feel like we're in a place where we might be able to at least eliminate it for a year or 2 years. And if we're doing this with the trash, the incinerator not being there anymore, and if we're getting, some money from that, but that's something else that we can talk about at another meeting.
Like Councilor Govan said, that's a good idea, educating the people about the monies that we get from the recycling. I think that I'm looking at Councilor Edwards would keep Springfield clean and be a part of that project. That's a great idea.
That might encourage them to recycle more and we can make more money.
Exactly. And then look at the trash fee.
It was weird a few years ago when we were before this, DEP was actually pushing us to reduce our trash volume, get more into recycling. And, we were debating, okay, do you go to a smaller trash barrel? And I saw how that worked in some other communities. And the only thing that was missing there were torches and pitchforks. Some of the communities went to the smaller barrels. So, very want to make sure if we make people unhappy, I don't want to having people have these little barrels. So we wanted to make sure, and our recycling numbers, aside from trash going up, historically has been about 7,000 tons, and now we're pushing about 8,000. So
good.
Both of those have been popping up 15%, 20% anyways.
Yeah, and we can get extra recycling barrels.
Yes.
That is a question, Chris, and I'm going to wrap it up shortly. But Chris, that is a question that we get sometimes: is can people request a second recycling bin?
People can request both a second trash barrel at cost. It would be another $90, and can request a second recycling barrel.
And the recycling barrel is free?
Yeah, if that's all they're requesting, recycling barrel's free.
Okay.
Yep, I have two myself.
Yeah. I think I might be interested in that, to be honest. Thank you very much.
I know mine's full. It's just me and my wife, and mine is chock full every 2 weeks.
Yeah, mine as well. And I think relative to the next steps and what I was mentioning earlier about exploring our master plan, I think what we want to look to is giving people more options in terms of waste management, not less. And one of the things some folks have brought up to me is a municipal composting program. I'd like to see us explore that. I think that could be valuable. I also want us to be cognizant now as a community that is essentially going to be exporting our waste to other communities, and as a community that was impacted by that for so many years. I think that our goal should be to reduce waste as much as we can, not only to reduce overall cost, but to be cognizant of our part in reducing waste overall. So again, I think it's a conversation over the next several years as we have this buffer around how do we give people more options for responsible waste management. And how do we do that in a way that is environmentally and fiscally conscious in the city of Springfield? So that's certainly a discussion I expect this committee will continue to have. Go ahead, Chris.
Just to add on to what you were talking about, Jess, Compost, right now, we provide compost to the residents. It is at Smead Arena. And it's always funny because we put it out and it's almost like somebody standing there handing out dollar bills.
Mhm.
It disappears in a couple days, but throughout, beginning in like middle of April and all the way through the summer, we put out whatever we can. We are working with Covanta to try and develop a better space at the landfill for residents to go and be able to pick that up constantly, but they're working on some land agreements with Eversource because we do have we being us and Covanta, we have about 40,000 or so yards of material in various stages of decay up at the landfill. So we're trying to figure out a way so that residents can come on a daily basis and pick this stuff up at the landfill, because right now that's not possible. So we bring it over and put it at Smead Arena.
That is certainly a popular program, and I've seen the cars. I think what I was referring more to was an option for residents to dispose of organic food waste outside of the trash system, outside of the incineration option.
Yeah,
that would certainly be a large undertaking, but something we could, again, discuss over the next several years as we talk about the future.
And I think one of the problems we're going to be running into is DEP now is getting into, it's just going to be more and more regulated. They're going to be talking about having to split certain things out of trash. The thing that has come up with us now, which we were discussing as part of our budget, we now have to separately collect mattresses, and they are required now by law, they have to be recycled. So that's going to be a huge expense to the city. Whereas right now it's just mattresses like that are, it's bulk material, they are incinerated. By law, beginning November 1st, that's not going to be allowed anymore. So we got to figure out how we're going to collect them. We got to figure out cost. We got to figure out where they're going. And so that we're in the middle of that right now. And every so often DEP throws those wonderful curveballs at us that sound great, but trying to figure out how we're going to do it is a little bit of a different story.
Well, and to that point, I expect that will continue. So to the degree that we can, plan for it and get ahead of it, as you did, Chris, with this contract, I think is going to be beneficial overall to the city. I think one of the challenges, and I've spoken about this in other contexts, is, a lot of these regulations are I think, intended to ultimately benefit cities like Springfield that have been impacted over the years by this type of pollution. But then what ends up happening is the increased cost of it is then placed on those communities, right?
Oh God,
and
yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's the challenge that I encounter with some of the ways this is discussed at the state level. I think that at the same time that they are generating these types of regulations and policies, which overall are positive, they also need to be coming up with revenue sources to aid communities that have been historically impacted, and not just passing the cost of an unfunded mandate that they claim is to protect our communities onto the communities that can afford it the least. We had that conversation around our bidding on hybrid vehicles, right? Which was we want to reduce pollution from municipal vehicles throughout the city, but we also have to be cognizant of what our residents can afford. And so trying to solve these problems on the backs of the communities that have been impacted by them is regressive and unacceptable, and the state has to, I think, take more responsibility to provide revenue to our communities, state aid specifically for environmental justice communities, to solve these problems. So rest assured, Chris, as we come forward with proposals around waste solutions, we will also be going to the state legislative delegation and saying, you need to come up with the funds to pay for this. So that's my mantra for today.
I fully expect the next steps after mattresses are going to be things like separating out textiles, So I see a lot of that happening in the near future that is, going to be, we jokingly say that in 10 years in front of everybody's house, they're going to have 10 different barrels, picking up different things. So I hope it doesn't get to that point, but, it's going to be a lot of these trying to separate things out of the stream to make, whether we're talking about recycling or being able to get rid of materials, a lot easier.
Well, I don't have a problem with giving people more solutions for waste management, but they should tax the polluters to pay for it. That's all I'll say on that for today.
And Jesse, I'm wondering if
any last comments. We'll go to Councilor Govan and then Councilor Perez.
I was just wondering if we can use some of these urban gardens that are doing composting to take some of that waste, like GTC, Wellspring Harvest, figure out a way to collaborate with them and make it a little bit easier for the residents and the city to make that happen. Just a thought.
Valuable conversation for the future. Valuable conversation for the future. Councilor Perez, any final questions or thoughts?
No, I think the idea that you have brought, Councilor Letterman, about meeting and looking at the master plan for the solid waste is a great idea. So we'll be ahead ourselves when the time comes. That's all I have to say as a comment.
Very good. Chris, any final thoughts?
At this point, no, Councilor. Probably in a much smaller area when we do our budget presentation in a few weeks, I'll be talking about this. So any other questions that the other councilors end up with, happy to answer them at that time as well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for appearing today, Chris, and for your foresight in the contract negotiation. Totally unrelated question before we hop off. It is people are getting out in their yards, and I'm getting questions on yard waste collection. So just to make sure I'm clear, you are collecting yard waste every recycling day, right?
Absolutely. Started April 5th, we started. So it will continue through most likely the middle of December. So
Okay.
recycling day, put the stuff out. Yep.
For larger limbs, like branches and stuff, they have to be bundled.
They got to be bundled. Yep.
And how small do they have to be?
I think it's 4 feet in length.
People have very specific questions, understandably.
Yeah. It is. I can find the regulation, but I think it's 4 feet.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
As long as it's bundled and short and somebody can pick it up and get it in the truck. No, we're not going to go too crazy. It's when people just throw a giant limb out on the tree belt.
Right. That's not going to work. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We will reconvene for future meetings as needed. And everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Zaida, one quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, I dropped that letter off to Hannah last week.
Oh, good.
So
that's great.
I hope she should be okay for a little while.
She should be. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Thank you.
Chris.